At the beginning of the anime, we learn that our main character died at the age of 49 due to a serious illness, and now he is in front of God. God apologizes for giving him a difficult life and says he will grant one wish in Hiraku's next life. Our main character's name is Hiraku, and he wishes to become a farmer in his next life. As a gift, God gives him a super advanced tool that can transform into any farming tool. Hiraku is immediately sent to a new world, where he feels incredibly happy because, after so long, he can move his body again. Then, he summons the advanced tool to test it out since he wants to start his dream life as soon as possible. However, there are many monsters around, so he must be cautious. Hiraku also needs to find a water source quickly. Next, we see a large tree that can be used as a landmark. To find water, Hiraku uses dowsing techniques, but this takes years. So, he switches to Plan B, digging for water underground. This method isn't easy, but Hiraku eventually finds a water source, likely thanks to his advanced tool. When using the tool, he doesn't feel tired at all. Now that he has water, he must also find food quickly. But the animals around him are dangerous. As it turns out, a person can survive without food for 30 days, so Hiraku decides to clear the area first. During the clearing process, he comes across a large tree. With the help of his advanced tool, Hiraku cuts down the tree with just one hit. He then turns the tree's wood into beams to build a house. Before he realizes it, night has fallen. Though he has a magnifying glass, the sun has already set. But Hiraku doesn't want to waste the night, so he begins making household furniture. The next day, his main task is to clear the area around him, but before that, he starts a fire to ensure the night won't be too dark. Suddenly, a monster attacks him, and with no other choice, Hiraku defeats the monster with a single blow. Although the monster's meat doesn't taste good, in survival mode, taste doesn't matter. Now, Hiraku also needs a toilet, so he builds a simple one, but feels uncomfortable doing his business in the open. He works a little harder to enclose the area. Hiraku realizes he can't rely on animal meat to survive, so he begins farming vegetables. But for that, he needs land, and without wasting any time, Hiraku starts working on it. Unfortunately, when he wants to plant crops, he doesn't have any seeds. Without seeds, his dream of farming can't come true. This dream would remain a dream, meaning our entire day here would be wasted. However, the next day we see a lot of vegetables beginning to grow, perhaps thanks to our magical tool. But we also need to protect this place from wild animals, so we need to build structures. We must dig trenches outside and put up fences inside to close off the area. We also need to ensure the plants aren't damaged, so we have to water them daily. We also learn some cartography techniques, and using them, we build a house. Though the design isn't very impressive, we'll eventually have a grand home. The next day, Hiraku sees some dogs that might need our help. We invite them into the house, and earlier we had killed a wild boar. It turns out the dogs love the boar meat. One of the dogs is a very fat female, and you can probably guess what that means. But suddenly, the female dog starts to experience pain. We didn't know much about the situation, so we decided to let them stay in the house. To give them privacy, we chose to stay in our old house and lit a campfire outside their home to ensure they wouldn't feel disturbed. The next day, we realized that our family had grown by 4 new members. The puppies were so adorable that I decided to build a new house for myself, as I could no longer use the old one. Before this, we didn't know that dogs could eat vegetables, but because of them, we found another reason to farm. These dogs also protected our fields, making farming much easier. Afterward, we named the male dog Kuro and the female dog Yuki. Later, we were shown a girl who was about to venture into the forest of death, which is extremely dangerous for ordinary people. However, it turns out that Hiraku lives in that forest. We then see God apologizing for accidentally sending Hiraku to the forest of death, a place full of dangerous monsters. On the other hand, Hiraku had built statues of the gods as a sign of gratitude. We saw many vegetables growing, the ones we had thought of while farming, meaning that whatever vegetables we imagined would grow here. After that, we began farming by imagining green beans, and bean trees started to grow. Thanks to the magical tools, the plants grew 10 times faster. We tried planting some crops outside, but it took years for them to fully grow, so we had to eat regular food. If we had salt, the food would taste better. Then, we noticed that our dogs started growing horns on their heads, and they loved playing with us. Thanks to these dogs, I was able to travel far from home and eventually discovered a river. The place was very far from home, so we built a toilet there. But we still had to construct a large tunnel to bring water to the house. However, winter was approaching, which meant we had to store food for the season. We tried using rabbit pelts for winter, but they smelled terrible. Then, Kuro brought his friend who was skilled at making clothes. We named him Jabu, and by trading some potatoes, he made many clothes that would be very useful during winter. In addition, he crafted other useful items to decorate our home. However, Hiraku was starting to feel very lonely here and wished for a companion to spend the winter with. After the winter passed, we found out that Zabuton had many puppies, and all the dogs had grown up. After that, all the dogs started leaving the house, and Hiraku felt like no one would come back. But a few days later, all the dogs returned with their mates, and it seemed that one of the dogs had been in a fight. Suddenly, Zabuton sounded an alarm, signaling an approaching threat. But when we got there, we discovered it was actually a girl. Hiraku went to help her, but suddenly, the girl transformed into her true form and bit Hiraku. At the same time, all the dogs began biting the girl. Then, the girl revealed that she was actually a vampire who had gotten lost in the forest. She bit Hiraku because she needed his blood to heal herself. After that, Hiraku gave the girl some of his blood, and after drinking it, she returned to her original form. They both then toured the farm, and the girl loved the vegetables growing there. Now, Hiraku felt very happy because, after such a long time, he finally had someone to talk to. Night fell, and we learned that the girl's name was Lucy, but in this story, I'll refer to her as Lucy. At that time, Lucy asked Hiraku if she could stay to continue her research, as there were many plants she had never seen before in her life. However, Hiraku made her another offer, asking Lucy to stay with him forever. The proposal was so sudden that the girl became nervous. Then Hiraku explained that he had no problem with Lucy being a vampire, he just wanted a companion to live with. But Lucy misunderstood Hiraku's words. However, Hiraku didn't want to miss this opportunity and finally made Lucy his companion. The next day, Lucy seemed smaller and said that she was exhausted from the previous night's activities. At that moment, Hiraku told her that she was now the first official member of Hiraku's village. Lucy asked if this was really a village. Hiraku replied that it wasn't big yet, but in the future, he wanted to make it one. Lucy's presence was very beneficial to Hiraku. For example, she planted many herbs that could be used to make tea. While eating, they discovered that while digging a hole, they found a layer that could be melted into salt, something they hadn't known before. Lucy also used her powers to light up their house. Lucy and Hiraku were resting when suddenly, Zabuton started ringing a bell, and Hiraku experienced déjà vu. This time, they also learned that another girl was trapped. Upon seeing the girl, Lucy fled. But the girl used her powers to clean herself and scolded Lucy. As a result, all the dogs began attacking her again, and they all ended up inside Hiraku's house. This girl was named Tia, and she was actually an angel far stronger than ordinary humans. She came looking for Lucy because Lucy had destroyed a king's castle, and currently, there was a huge bounty on Lucy's head. However, Lucy claimed that she had changed a lot, and the young man sitting there was actually her husband. As she said this, Lucy appeared very shy. Tia then said she couldn't stay there because the dogs were too dangerous, and Lucy agreed, having experienced the same thing in the past. Lucy then showed Tia all of her beautiful plants, but after seeing Zabuton, Tia fainted. After that, Hiraku began cutting vegetables. He taught them how to cook and added a bit of salt to the cabbage, serving it to them, and they were surprised to learn that green vegetables could be so delicious. That night, Lucy convinced Tia to stay with them. The three of them then started spending time together there. However, one day, Tia mentioned how much she loved the strawberries and wanted to plant more. But Hiraku explained that to harvest more strawberries, they would need more people. That's when Hiraku realized that the number of their dogs had increased significantly, and they needed a new place to accommodate them. Afterward, Shaka built them a new space. Then we see that Zabuton had new offspring, and the older ones started leaving the area. Even Tia said she had urgent work to attend to, so she had to leave. But a few days later, she returned with a group of girls, all of whom wanted to stay in Hiraka's village. It turned out that these girls had a dark past. The village they used to live in had been destroyed. Hiraku said he had no problem with them staying there, but they would need to build new homes for themselves. At that moment, Lucy introduced them to their dogs, causing everyone to faint after seeing them. Even after seeing Zabutan, their reaction remained the same. Yes, all these girls were actually elves living in the forest. They all started building houses together. Hirako didn't have to work too hard because these girls were very skilled at cartography, and they quickly managed to build their homes. The structure of their houses was so good that it made Hiraku envious, and he remarked that he would build an even better house next time. Their work was excellent, but we learned that they were very fond of eating garlic. Hiraka then said, "You're really not what I imagined. I thought elves liked to live in forests and eat berries." But the elves explained that wasn't true and said that in exchange for staying there, they would work in mining and blacksmithing. We then see that they were very skilled at blacksmithing, which was extremely beneficial for them. The next day, the elves mentioned that they had high-quality yeast that could be used to make bread. Hiraku had no objections, and the bread turned out to be delicious, which everyone enjoyed. Hiraku then pondered and asked Lucy, "Does this place have another owner?" Lucy explained that the owner of the land was the Demon Lord. Hearing this, Hiraku was shocked, but Lucy said that if he had cleared the area by himself, then he was the owner now. Night had fallen, and all the girls gathered to talk about how strange Hiraku was, as he didn't know much about this wall or how odd this place was. They were surprised that farming like this could be done in the middle of the forest. However, they were happy because they finally had a nice place to live, and the owner of the place was very kind. You might remember that a long time ago, we found a water source and decided to bring it to our house. Now that we had workers, we could start this task. We dug a big hole where the water would be stored, and now we also had to create the channels. Stone was the best choice for this task, but we didn't have enough. Due to the excavation of this large hole, a lot of soil had accumulated, so we could use it to make the channels. We could also use wood instead, but the risk of leaking was very high. We all worked together to finish this. We started making the channels, and the elf was very helpful in our work. Thanks to their help, what we thought would take a long time was finished much quicker. While working, suddenly a fish attacked us, but in an instant, it became our meal. Upon seeing the food, the elf looked scared, while Lucy and Tia had never tasted it before. However, after seeing me eat it, they tried it, and everyone loved it because it was delicious. The next day, while we were working, Zabutan came with a bee. Actually, it was a queen bee, and the other bees were much smaller. We built a hive for the bees. While working, Tia came to see us, but upon seeing the bees, she ran away in fright. However, with the help of these bees, we would be able to collect honey later. We now had a water source, which meant we could finally grow wheat. But for that, we needed a different type of field. So, we immediately began this task, filling the field with water, which was crucial for the wheat. For the next part, we needed the elf's help. They were hesitant at first, but then they started enjoying the work. Meanwhile, Zabutan worked as the guard, and the field we created turned out to be far more beautiful than we had imagined. It was time to harvest, and the elf was very quick at it. Hirako thought that in the past, he had only seen things like this on TV and always wanted to try it. But now, he could finally do it. We had to speed up this task, and as soon as we harvested, we started grinding it. After cleaning it using a pestle, our rice was finally ready. Now it was time to cook and enjoy the results. Lucy helped us light the fire while all the elves wondered what special meal they would eat today. Our rice was ready, but after turning it into rice balls, it tasted even better. Lucy and Tia wondered if this food would be worth all the hard work they put in. The elf really enjoyed the meal, and Lucy realized that Hirako had added fish to it, which made it even more delicious. They didn't use water to clean themselves. The next day, after farming, we learned that they used magic to clean themselves, but Hiraku couldn't use magic. This made him feel envious, so he decided to create something. The structure he built involved heating water and then storing it in a tub where we could clean ourselves. We used old pipes to channel the water, and a chimney was made from mud and a hammer. We also set up some tools to give it a more realistic feel, and our favorite part was when everyone bathed together. That way, Hiraku could clean himself without using magic. However, there was a problem. If the water was dumped directly into the river, it would pollute it. So, we started using slime, which could easily consume the waste. Tia was the one who brought the slime, but Hiraku thought that the slime was very dangerous and that one day all slimes would dominate humans, but that wasn't the case. Now night had fallen, and the hero was explaining to everyone how to use something, but everyone seemed very confused. Then, they said they wanted to see a demo so they could understand better. Hiraku then put on a towel and cleaned himself thoroughly. Afterward, he felt really relaxed. He thought it had been a long time since he had the chance to speak, but suddenly all the girls joined the conversation and said it was a great idea. Now Hiraku felt a little embarrassed, but he thought that we should always share things with others. The next day, while gathering wood, Hiraku noticed that a lot of mushrooms had grown. But the girls had different opinions about the mushrooms. Some said they were poisonous, some said they shouldn't be eaten, and others said the mushrooms were delicious. Hiraku personally enjoys eating mushrooms, so he allowed more mushrooms to grow there. The next day, we found out that many elves had come to live. They said they had no place to stay, and about 200 years ago, an attack had forced them to wander the forest ever since. Hiraku gave them permission to stay, but they needed new homes to live in. Then, we shifted to Kuro's perspective. Kuro said that he used to be very strong, and no animals in the forest could defeat him. But one day, he met Yuki, and Yuki easily defeated him. After that, the two of them began their journey together. In the forest, many animals had their own offspring, so they thought they also needed to have children. However, one day they encountered a grappler bear, and with a single attack, both of their horns were broken. After the attack, they became so weak that they could no longer hunt. Before, they had seen people in very bad shape, but they were surprised to find someone living in the middle of the forest. Their condition was so poor that even that person could defeat them. Hiraku gave them a chance to stay at his house and provided them with baran meat to eat. They were shocked because this weak boy was able to defeat a baran, something they themselves wouldn't dare to face. Over time, their children grew up, and Hiraku gave them names. Hiraku's food was so delicious that Kuro made him his master. Then Kuro said, "Perhaps my master doesn't know that I'm called an inferno wolf, and we are one of the most dangerous creatures in this forest." Their team also had Jabutin, and later, many girls joined. But the good thing is that my master still loves me as he did before. Everyone was going to build a big house together, so we started working on building the house here. We began digging a large hole where our storage space would be. However, the elves said it wouldn't be big enough, and we needed to make the hole larger. In the end, the house became very big and luxurious. Lucy then said that the house was designed by her and Tia, so of course, it would be luxurious. When entering the house, everyone immediately arrived at the main hall. Beside it, there was a dining room where everyone could eat together, and across from it was Hiraku's room. There was also a room where two people could do their special work. After seeing the room, Lucy said that she could finally do the work she had always wanted to do. On the other hand, our basement was also ready, where we could store many things. And we had also installed statues of Kuro and Yuki in front of the house since they were the first members of our village. The next day, Lucy said she wanted to eat something special, and Hiraku said he would make a special dish called curry. However, Hiraku felt a bit nervous because this dish was quite difficult to make. Then we went to the garden, where Hiraku had planted many different spices. There was cilantro, which smelled very fragrant, but for some reason, my dog was very afraid of it. And here is turmeric, which is used to add color to food, but it needs to be properly dried first. This task was given to Lucy, although her way of drying it was rather relaxed. Additionally, there were many other spices used here, but we won't go into detail. Now it was time to start cooking, and the elves were going to help me because Tia and Lucy were busy with urgent work. Even without them, Hiraku still worked well, but he felt like he was forgetting something important. Then he remembered that during the process of making curry, he had forgotten to make naan bread. However, at that moment, Lucy and Tia arrived and saw that all the elves and dogs were watching Hiraku work with great enthusiasm. Hiraku then started making naan bread and quickly finished it. That night, everyone gathered for dinner, and everyone loved the food. Tia even said that she was addicted to Hiraku's cooking. Winter was about to begin, so we had to prepare ourselves. We would store vegetables in a box, cover it with cloth, and cover it with snow to keep it fresh for a long time. We had also gathered a lot of wood, so we wouldn't need to go out looking for firewood during winter. At that time, our dogs couldn't go hunting either, so we started smoking meat to preserve it for longer. On the other hand, Zabutan was going to hibernate during the winter, so before that, we had ordered many blankets from him and gave him plenty of potatoes in exchange. During that time, Hiraku realized that Lucy was very skilled in using her magical powers. One night, Hiraku asked Lucy how she could use magical techniques since Hiraku had tried but couldn't do it. Lucy said that for them, it wasn't a big deal, but Hiraku would never be able to use magical techniques because he was human, and humans couldn't use magic. Hiraku then said that he felt useless because, besides farming and cooking, he couldn't do anything else. But Lucy replied that wasn't true because Hiraku was the only one brave enough to live in the Te Forest. Not long after, winter arrived, and Hiraku thought they would get bored if they just sat inside the house, so they decided to try playing board games. They chose to play the game Rivers, which uses black and white pieces. In this game, if a third color appears between two others, it also changes to match the surrounding colors. At the end of the game, whoever has the most pieces of their color wins. Tia and Lucy challenged each other to this game, and soon Lucy was on the verge of losing. In frustration, she threw the entire board. However, it was futile because Tia used her powers to return all the pieces to their original positions. In another room, we see the dogs also playing the game, and Hiraku was surprised to see that they had already mastered the rules. Bored of the board games, Hiraku decided to set up a mini bowling game. Somehow, this game brought a lot of fun, and everyone enjoyed it immensely. In this way, they spent the winter eating together and playing games. Eventually, they could go outside, but they didn't know that a big surprise awaited them. Outside the village, a large dragon had arrived to attack. The dragon began its assault on the village with walls of fire, but Lucy and Tia used their powers to protect it. Hiraku thought about how hard he had worked to build the village and decided he wouldn't let the dragon destroy it. He prepared an attack and, without hesitation, struck the dragon. After a second powerful attack, the dragon was finally defeated. Hiraku's team went to inspect the dragon, and Hiraku wondered why such a massive dragon attacked their village. Could someone have sent the dragon to attack them? But Lucy assured him that was unlikely, as it's very hard to control a dragon. She was convinced it was just a wild dragon that had wandered into their village by accident. Then Hiraku said he was really hungry and asked if they could eat the dragon. The story then shifts to a neighboring village, where a dragon is talking to a human. The human said that the dragon should not have made that mistake because Hiraku had easily defeated it. If the dragon tried again, it would be defeated just as easily. Afterward, we see another village where a general named Bezel is speaking with two of his companions. He said that the king of Hiraku's village had slain their dragon with just one attack, and they feared he would also destroy their kingdom. Meanwhile, Fyric used the dragon meat to make various dishes that everyone loved. Then Tia asked if the shield could withstand the attack Hiraku used, but Lucy replied that their shield would be useless against that strike. Hiraku tried different types of food, but still felt something was missing. So he decided to make wine from the grapes they had gathered. The people in this world had long known about wine, so they began collecting a large amount of grapes. After that, Hiraku made a machine, and the girls had to walk on top of it to process the grapes. However, after a while, they began to stumble, and eventually, they all decided to sing and dance. The song they sang was very cheerful. Afterward, they had gathered enough juice, but it would take some more time to ferment into wine. The next day, the bell rang again, signaling that their trap had caught something. When they went to check, they found a girl trapped. Her name was Flora, and she turned out to be Lucy's younger sister. Flora loved the food and ecosystem there and began researching everything. But as quickly as she arrived, she left just as fast. Now she's gone, and we are shown a scene of God, where God apologizes to his daughter. God's daughter said, "How could you give my almighty rules to a human without my permission?" She grew even more upset because of the two statues Hiraku had made. One was of an old man, but one should have been of her. A month later, Flora returned, bringing some servants and cows with her. "Friends, we can start milking the cows, and these servants will take care of various household chores." The way the servants cleaned and spoke was very professional, but they weren't skilled at cooking. Then Hiraku taught them how to cook well, and the servants loved this new cooking style. After that, they began preparing various kinds of dishes. Tia then realized that different groups had already formed here, but she herself didn't have any members in her group. After that, Tia returned to her village and brought several couples and a chicken as a gift. Hiraku was very happy because he could now milk cows and get eggs from the chickens. There were some monsters here called wise men. They were very strong, and we could make use of them in our work. In addition, there were many angels protecting our village from dragon attacks. Upon further inspection, they found many elves who wanted to live in our village. There was no problem with us accepting them, so we welcomed them into the village as well. After that, Hiraku called the group leaders and said that he used to live here alone, but slowly, the place had grown, and now many members had joined. He wanted to give the village a good name and asked for their suggestions. No one could think of a good name, so Jabu, Tan, and Kuro suggested opening a large gate. After opening it, we saw the tree where our journey began. After that, we gathered everyone and named the village Great Tree Village. From then on, everyone started calling Hiraku the village chief, which made him a bit nervous. But Lucy said, "You started all of this, so you should be the chief." Afterward, everyone celebrated with a feast, and for the first time, they really enjoyed the wine. However, Tia noticed that Hiraku was standing alone, so she called him. And Hiraku said that everything he was doing now had only been dreams before, and he still couldn't believe that it was all really happening. Now that winter has passed, Hiraku has officially become the mayor of our village, but there hasn't been any major change in our daily lives. Then an angel came and informed us that someone from the Demon Kingdom was coming to meet us. We found out that the person was Bezel, and he brought gifts for us. He actually came to resolve our tax issues. Hiraku thought that he didn't know much about this, and wondered if he should consult his partners. However, he decided that now that he was a part of the village, he should handle it on his own. Bezel then explained that every year, they would give 10% of the agricultural yield as tax. Hiraku agreed, and after that, they signed a contract. Bezel then left, but everyone praised Hiraku for doing a great job. In other villages, the tax rate was 50 or 60%, but for their village, it was only 10, which was very good. Now, in the Demon Kingdom, Bezel was shown to be very afraid and said that people didn't know how hard he had fought to save his life. They had a very powerful military force, plus the presence of the great vampire Lulusi and the angel Thaya, which meant they could never defeat their team. Bezel then looked at the gift Hiraku had given him. Inside, there were many delicious apples, but then Bezel also noticed the fabric and realized that the fabric had been made by the Spider Demon King, which was very dangerous. The next day, a dragon came to meet Hiraku. They were actually the rulers of Pazi village and wanted to be friends with Hiraku, so they brought a very beautiful sword. Hiraku invited them into his home, and the dragon reverted to its original form. The dragon's name was Drain. Drain greatly enjoyed being with Hiraku and didn't want to leave, but his assistant forced them to go. Now, many visitors came to the village every day, so they had to prepare a special way to welcome these guests. Every time Zabu Ten rang the bell, all the male warriors were ready to attack, and the angels together brought their guests as if they were captives, which wasn't good. As a result, the bell was changed, and Zabu Ten now used a different bell to welcome guests. Hiraku and his team would greet them together. They decided not to let these people stay in the village, so they built houses for 30 people. Flora was assigned to oversee them, ensuring that no one did anything wrong. A few days later, the new guests arrived, and their leader was named Zarf. They were from Howling Village, where the residents spent their days hunting and mining. Previously, they traded with a nearby human village, but for some reason, that trade had to stop. These people are referred to as middlemen and want to trade with our village. However, suddenly Lucy brought two demons and said that they had been hiding in the bushes near our village, which is considered disrespectful here. They were then allowed to enter the village, but Hiraku noticed that only ordinary food was prepared for them, without any wine. All the women in the village discussed how visitors in the past would always bring gifts, but these people arrived empty-handed and even hid 2 of their members near the village. This made Hiraku suspicious that they might have ill intentions, but he eventually agreed to give them a little wine. After talking to them, Hiraku learned that they didn't know if the village was safe or not, so they hid 2 of their members as a precaution. If anything went wrong, they could alert their village. The next day, a meeting between the 2 groups took place. Zarf said that they had many home decorations that could be traded. The people wanted to trade food with Hiraku, so Hiraku had to visit their village. Both villages were able to trade successfully, and Hiraku agreed to this. As they were about to leave, Jeff apologized to everyone and explained that they had never visited such a wealthy village before, and they didn't know they were supposed to bring gifts. In reality, they were very poor and had nothing valuable to offer. However, Jeff promised that when he returned, he would bring an expensive gift. A few days later, Tia, Drum, and Wizard Man decided to go there to trade. Hiraku also wanted to go, but the mayor didn't give him permission. Actually, after their first visit, Dime had been returning frequently, and each time he brought gifts. Because of this, the girls in the village didn't mind. Hiraku decided to give them a barrel of wine in return. They all got onto Dime's cart and headed to the village. At first, they seemed strange to the villagers, so no one wanted to trade with them. However, they offered some food to sample, and the villagers liked it. Soon, all of their food was sold out. After the trade, Tia returned and said that 20 girls from the village wanted to come to Hiraku's village. Hiraku said it was fine, but they had to bring some men too. A few days later, the boys arrived, but it turned out there were only 3 small children. A beast girl named Sana said that they were willing to do any work in the village as long as they were not kicked out. Hiraku assured them that no one would kick them out. After that, the beast girls joined the village and greatly enjoyed living there. It was discovered that these beast girls could also use magic. However, it turned out that everyone in the village could use magic, except Hiraku. Later, an angel arrived and informed them that a grappler bear and a viper were fighting in the forest. Hiraku went to stop them and managed to defeat both animals in a single strike. Hiraku mentioned that if the meat wasn't used soon, it would go to waste. So, he began cooking the meat. The viper's meat tasted like fried chicken, and the bear's meat was delicious. After that, Hiraku taught Sana how to make mayonnaise. However, while trying, Sana accidentally blew up her house 3 times. Hiraku came to help her. There are 2 ways to make mayonnaise. First, by grinding many seeds and storing them for several months. But they decided to use the second method, which involved mixing eggs with salt and vinegar, then stirring it until it became tasty mayonnaise. Suddenly, new visitors arrived in the village to try the wine they had heard was famous. However, the villagers didn't want to give the wine away for free. The guests said they had seen the village farm and knew that many different things were grown there. They had a unique technique for making different kinds of alcohol. Eventually, they all used this technique to create a new, very strong drink. They celebrated with a feast, and Dime joined them. During the party, Hiraku realized that these people were adults, and he asked Grime if he liked any of the girls there. Grime said that the girls were nice, but they were all too young for him, and he wanted a woman his age who also had a mustache. The next day, Hiraku was working when he saw a dragon approaching their village. But Grime stepped in between them and stopped the dragon. Then, another dragon quickly approached the village, and Hiraku attacked it with his spear. As Hiraku was about to deliver the second blow, Grime's assistant stood in his way. We learned that for some time, Grime had been secretly visiting our village without telling his family and partying here. His family thought he was having an affair with someone. Later, we found out that these 2 dragons were Grime's daughter and wife. His daughter's name was Last S. Mon, and his wife's name was Grape S. Moon. Grime told his family that this village was very strong, and he was worried that it might surpass and destroy them, so he wanted to maintain a good relationship with the village. That's why he visited the village so often. Lottie then told her mother that the spear attack was very dangerous, and if she hadn't dodged in time, everything would have been over. However, Grape said that the attack was so powerful that she didn't even have a chance to dodge. In fact, it was her old friend, Zabutan, who saved her from the situation. After that, They decided that last Mon would stay here to conduct research on the village, especially regarding its military strength. We didn't have a problem with that, but her arrival caused our cows to stop producing milk, and our dogs were terrified by the dragons. Lottie greatly enjoyed playing with the village children, but she was so strong that she often caused chaos. However, we later realized that these dragons were not only strong but also very intelligent, so we gave them jobs as receptionists. Bezel came here to trade oranges with us, but he was so scared that he couldn't say anything. After returning to his castle, Bezel spoke about the dragons, realizing they wouldn't be able to defeat this village. The next day, Bezel told his daughter that they had an important mission. Their neighboring country was growing stronger every day, so they needed to investigate, especially its military strength. Upon arriving at Flora Village, they saw it was just an ordinary village. However, when they entered, their first encounter was with last Moon, which greatly shocked them. They thought, if there is a dragon this powerful at the start, how many other strong people are there? After that, Flora began her research and found out that the village was inhabited by beast men and lizard men. She also saw the angel from Nile, Tia, and the vampire princess and thought, what are so many powerful beings doing in one place? Later, she also saw the inferno wolf, demon spiders, high-ranking elves, and the angel of death, and she realized that even if they attempted to attack this village with the help of their neighboring country, they would undoubtedly lose. Flora thought that there was one person stronger than all of them, known as the village chief, but she hadn't met him yet. However, at that moment, Hiraku arrived and asked if she needed help. Flora replied that she didn't need any help, and she wondered, what is an ordinary person doing among all these powerful beings? But shortly after, she found out that this man was actually the village chief, the person she had been looking for all along. And last Mon mentioned that after the attack, her mother had nearly been killed. However, a few days later, the number of slimes in our village started to increase, and we had gathered quite a few slimes. One day, one of the slimes drank a bottle of wine from our village, which caused its color to change to something strange. The villagers became very angry and said the slime should be expelled from the village. However, later the villagers forgave the slime, and it stayed in our village. In fact, the slime even joined us at the party. Sometime later, autumn began. In autumn, many different foods are consumed, but we had already eaten a lot of food earlier. However, we realized that we hadn't tried seafood yet. Hearing that, everyone became very excited and wanted to try seafood. Flora told us that there was a kingdom called the Donic Kingdom, which was located very close to the sea. By trading with them, we could get good fish. After that, Last Man and Flora went together to trade. On the other hand, we were introduced to a merchant named Mikkel, who was the largest trader in the city of Sasa. Then, Mikkel found out that someone had come to trade with him. However, Mikkel explained that trading didn't work like that. If they wanted to trade with him, they had to make an appointment first, and there were some rules to follow. But at that moment, Mikkel felt something was strange, so he approached them and found out that Last Man, who was considered a very dangerous dragon, had come to trade. However, Mikkel had known Flora before due to his long-standing relationship with her father. Seeing the fruits they brought, Mikkel realized that these fruits were in very high demand in the market, and by selling them, he could make a lot of money. The girls informed him that they had a list of items, and in exchange, they wanted everything on that list. Mikkel really liked those items, so he decided to visit their village and sign a contract. As a result, they went to the village with Last Man, but Mikkel started feeling scared because there were many dangerous people there. However, he later met Hiraku, who told him that they wanted to trade many goods with him and sell those goods to various countries. In return, they asked for a large sum of money, and thus, we agreed to the contract. Mikkel then left, thinking that the people's behavior was very kind, but after seeing everything he had experienced, he felt he might not return there again. Everyone really enjoyed the seafood, and Hiraku decided that next time he would ask Mikkel to bring other goods. The next day, while working, we suddenly saw a dragon start attacking our village for no apparent reason, as if it were challenging us to a fight. Shuruk then pulled out a ball and attacked the dragon, bringing it down with a second strike. After approaching the dragon, Rhyme also arrived and informed us that the dragon was actually his brother, named Hikari. Hikari explained that he had learned from a secret source that Rime's marriage to Hiraka's daughter had been arranged. However, he didn't want Last Man to marry just anyone, so he came to see who he would be marrying. That's why he challenged Hiraku to a fight, so he could see for himself who Hiraka was. Hiraku immediately ordered the clearing of the crater caused by the blast after discovering its power. Meanwhile, Hakurin easily blended into our surroundings. She really enjoyed the food here and was very skilled, but she was incredibly lazy, so we had to assign her to teach the village children. Honestly, this girl is very smart, but why are smart people always lazy? After some time, Hakurin started getting bored here, so we decided to play a boat game. However, we added an extra rule to the game. Anyone who loses must remove one piece of clothing. The game was intense, but everyone was still fully dressed except for Hiraku. Aside from his pants, all of Hiraka's clothes had been removed. If he lost again, he would have to take off his last piece of clothing. Hiraku became very serious and said that he couldn't afford to lose under any circumstances, because if he did, his pride would be shattered. However, Hiraka still lost and had to take off his clothes. The next day, some mermaids came to visit us. They were called Galgado. Apparently, our dogs had been bothering them at their residence, so they asked for protection from us. In return, they brought many goods for us. After that, we instructed our dogs not to enter anyone's home without permission. These mermaids were so beautiful that we couldn't take our eyes off their belongings. So, we gave them some clothes, and our relationship with them became very good. They also helped us trade with nearby villages. Then, the scene shifted to the demonic kingdom of Bezel, where they were discussing the fact that Harukin had also joined Hiraka's team, meaning they wouldn't be able to stop them. Then their leader, Golgo, appeared and said that his daughter hadn't spoken kindly to him in days. He was worried that his daughter might be angry with him. Then, we were shown Golgo's daughter, Yuri, talking to her comrades about how her sister, Flora, had been detained in the village of Pazi, and they had to free her no matter what. As a result, they planned an attack on the village. The next day, Flora was working there when Bezel came and informed her that a great threat was approaching, as Princess Yuki was planning to attack somewhere. Flora explained that when she was friends with Yuki, she wouldn't have done something like that, but ever since Yuki started befriending new people, her behavior had changed drastically. Bezel then told her that Yuri was actually planning to attack this village. Flora then wondered how they could be so foolish. She had repeatedly warned them that this village was very dangerous, and they wouldn't be able to win against it. Flora then began planning another way to stop them. The soldiers were preparing to attack, but then they encountered our mermaid, which terrified them so much that they immediately surrendered. It turns out that this was all Flora's plan, and Hirako had no idea about it. Afterward, Hirako learned that 4 new members would be joining his village. Flora warned him that if he didn't perform well, he would be expelled from the village. Flora also told Yuri that she wouldn't receive any special treatment here. Then, Flora began showing the newcomers around the village, and they really liked it. After that, we all went to the apple orchard, and the girls said these were the apples they had heard about often. If they managed to take over the village, they could eat these beautiful apples every day. Now they really liked the village, but they started saying it would be more fun to rule it. After that, they tried to escape from the village, but they were stopped by Zabutan. Later, they tried again, but this time they were blocked by the Inferno walls. They realized that even if they wanted to, they couldn't leave. Afterward, they started working diligently in the village and said they were ready to do any task, as long as they weren't expelled from the village. Although they had to work hard, they really enjoyed the food here. Meanwhile, Flora and Yuri were talking. Yuri said that the village was wonderful and that they shouldn't have tried to attack it. However, Flora asked why Yuri wanted to attack the village in the first place. Yuri explained that it was all her fault. Yuri said that they were childhood friends, but because Flora hadn't returned home in a long time, Yuri thought the people in the village had trapped her. That's why Yuri came to rescue her. Upon hearing this, Flora apologized to Yuri and promised she wouldn't make the same mistake again. The next day, Yuri came to help with the farming work alongside everyone else, even persuading her partners to join in. They all started working in the fields together and found they really enjoyed it. However, after a few days, Yuri said she had to return home because there was still a lot of work waiting for her there. Yuri also invited her partners to come back, but they refused because they liked the village so much and wanted to explore it more. Hearing this, Yuri decided to return home alone. Meanwhile, the scene showed Galga, who was furious, saying that since his daughter returned from the village, she had changed drastically. Galga suspected that this was because of a man, and he swore he wouldn't let that man get away. While they were gathering food for the winter, they collected more than they needed. As a result, Hakur and Lottie said they wanted to give the extra food to their families. Then we learned that Hakur's ancestors were very famous and strong. Hakur went alone to deliver the food to her family, but when she returned, she brought many mountain elves. The mountain elves usually lived among the mountains, but due to the winter, they were running out of food. Seeing this, Hiraku felt a bit concerned, and when they offered to leave if there were any issues, Hiraku said there was no problem, but he thought they might need to build new houses for the elves to stay. The elves mentioned that they were skilled hunters, but the animals here were too strong, so their traps weren't working well. The elves then noticed Hiraku making pottery, but he wasn't successful. Hiraku explained that he needed high-quality clay to make good pottery. The elves told him that there was high-quality clay in the mountains, and Hiraku used it to make various items. On the other hand, Last went to deliver food to his family and also to Sato City. There, Michael told him about a fish that had been bothering them for days. Last defeated the fish with just one punch, and in return, Michael gave him a lot of food. After that, they built a special area to accommodate the men who had also come to the village. Then, they discovered a dungeon near the village, and since it could be filled with danger, they decided to start researching it. The village members went there to investigate, and after they returned, we learned that a giant viper snake was spotted in the swamp. The meat of the viper was said to be very healthy for the body, so the entire village wanted to hunt it. That night, Hiraka noticed that Lucy's health had deteriorated, and everyone took good care of her. Suddenly, Sana asked Lucy if she had craved sour foods recently. Lucy then admitted that she had been craving tomatoes and sour foods for the past few days. After that, we realized that Hiraku was actually going to be a father. Upon hearing the news, the whole village became very excited. Time passed quickly as we worked here, and Lucy and I preferred waking up early. However, because of our habit of getting up early, it put a lot of pressure on our servants, so we decided to start waking up later. Then we found out that the slime that had drunk one barrel of our wine before had returned to the storage and drank another barrel, which made everyone very angry. Due to the growing number of villagers, we divided the meal system into 3 groups. First, those of us who come to eat, followed by the second group. Those who can't make it to the second group join the third one. However, some people are so lazy that they don't even come to the third group. The Guardians, Angels, reported that some rabbits tried to attack us, but Kuro's team managed to defeat them, and now they are all eating rabbit meat. These Guardians work very hard, but they often ask Wise Man to handle other tasks. In their free time, however, they are quite lazy. We've expanded our field significantly, but the task of maintaining them is in Zabutan's hands. Whenever Zabutan spots an insect, we immediately go and take care of the pests. Now, as lunchtime begins, meals seem strange to them since they can go days without eating while still working. Over time, they've adapted to this, and I always make sure we never run out of food. We've done a lot of farming work, and to beautify our village, we've also planted flowers here. Most of the cartography, mapping, work is handled by Hiraku. Hiraku has also developed a training system to ensure they don't become lazy and are always ready to face danger. However, Hiraku is quite weak, so Kells taught him the proper techniques. Hiraku felt insulted and used his spear to destroy the training targets. We found out that Yuri is very fond of sewing, so she wants to make more clothes from Zabutan and also has a strong liking for the elves here. She even requested to bring more elves. We had no problem with that, so we gave permission. Our servants have also been experimenting with new types of food, just like Hiraku, but sometimes they create dishes that are quite unpleasant. Day or night, our dogs never stop working, and while they work, they never drink juice. Hiraku was very happy to have built separate baths for men, but even so, Hiraku felt like someone was watching him. Suddenly, Hiraku yelled, "Help! Help!" and many people rushed out, but they just wanted to protect Hiraku. The next day, while working, we discovered that someone had entered our village. we saw a man sitting in front of our god statue, his head bowed. This happened, but Hiraku wondered how this man could enter our village, despite the strict security. Then Lucy came and explained that this man was actually their progenitor, which, in simple terms, could be called a great-grandfather. This man is 4,000 years old, and to maintain his youthful appearance, he erases his memory every 300 or 400 years. The man was thrilled to hear that Lucy was going to be a mother, as vampires typically don't do such things. Upon hearing this, the man began praising the statue kept in Hiraku's village. Then, we realized that what he truly wanted was that statue. Afterward, Hiraku made a new statue for him, and the man left with it, saying that he would offer something special in return. The progenitor returned to his village after 400 years and told his partner that the mayor of the Great Tree Village must have met the god before, as he had also met the god. The statue looked exactly like the god. They then placed the statue in their main hall and sent a piano to Hiraku as a gift. The piano was beautiful, and when Yuri's partner saw it, they recalled that it was one of the rarest pianos in the world. They realized that if they missed this opportunity, they might never get to play such a piano again. However, the piano was so expensive that they didn't dare to touch it. They then asked Hiraku to bring a more ordinary piano so they could practice first. After speaking with Mikkel, Hiraku managed to bring another piano. Flora and Yuri's partner started learning how to play the piano and then taught other villagers. Hiraku began working even harder as his responsibilities grew. Seeing this, Lucy called Hiraku to rest. Hiraku mentioned that he still couldn't believe he was going to be a father, and Lucy told him that the entire village was excited to welcome the baby. During dinner, everyone started asking Lucy about the baby's weight. Lucy replied that it felt like there were 2 large cabbages stored in her belly, which meant she was experiencing a lot of discomfort. Everyone then asked if there was anything they could do to help Lucy. Lucy said that usually after meals, they all drank a lot of wine, but since there was a baby in her belly, she couldn't drink wine, and this made her very sad. Hearing this, everyone went to the mayor and said they had decided to stop drinking wine and would throw away all the wine in the village. However, Hiraku told them there was no need to do that because they could store all the wine, which would make it taste even better. The next day, we saw that Dobbs looked very worried and said that no one in the village was drinking their wine, which meant they might have to leave the village. But Hiraku explained everything well to them, and after that, they became more motivated, determined to make even better wine. 9 months passed by without us realizing it. The next day, we saw that Tia had placed flowers in Lucy's room to help regulate the room's temperature. Then, one by one, the villagers started coming by and giving gifts to Lucy to celebrate this happiness. However, suddenly a man named Lyserman arrived and said that he didn't know much about gifts, but if Lucy wanted, she could drink his blood. After everyone left, we learned that Dobbs had given us a hammer as a gift, but we didn't know how to use it. But suddenly, Lucy started feeling pain, and everyone immediately prepared for the situation. At this point, Hiraku felt very tense and thought that this was a moment where he couldn't do anything. However, he then looked toward the great tree in our village and entered it. That's when he began to recall when Kara and Yuki were about to have their child. They were in the same condition, and the moon shone the same way at that time. He thought about where his journey began and where he is now after all this time. Morning came as he was still reflecting on all of this, and when he returned home, he found that he now had a son. After holding the child, everything felt like a dream to him, and he thought that just some time ago, he was counting his last breaths, and now he had achieved so much. He wished for his child to always be healthy. After that, we all returned to our normal lives. Our child was half human and half vampire, and we named him Alfred. Amid all of this, the villagers were very helpful to us, so we decided to give them gifts as a token of our gratitude. We also started a currency system here so everyone could easily buy things. Previously, if someone needed something, they had to come to me, but now they could buy items on their own. Hiraku made all these coins with his own hands, and to test them, he gave 3 coins as gifts to everyone. Some people use coins for decoration, while others enjoy making furniture. Some immediately spend their money on wine. The Kuro team really loves toys, which makes Hiraku have to work hard. During this time, a child came to Hiraku and said that he also wanted to have a child like Hiraku. Hiraku couldn't fulfill that wish, so he spent a day with him. Later, we were shown a scene from the Demon Kingdom, where everyone believed that Hiraku would not attack them. Golgo said that the boy had stolen his daughter's heart, so he would make him his son-in-law. Finally, Hiraku gave everyone a chance to celebrate the birth of his child with drinks. It had been a long time since they last drank, so they enjoyed it immensely. We learned that the DOPS team had created a new type of wine. To open the wine, they gave us a hammer, and we used it to break the barrel. Everyone loved the wine. But we also found out that until Hiraku's child grows up, he would only drink Lucy's milk, and until the child matures, Lucy couldn't drink wine. So, Lucy's drinks were separated. We also found out that there were many places around our village where people lived in very poor conditions. The leaders of our village wanted to help all of these people, but if new members were added to this village, the atmosphere would become chaotic. Therefore, we decided to build a grand new village, which would be named Great Tree Village 2.0.